You are listening to a Roamcast with Neil Kramer.
You are one under the stars. Shall I tell you what's out there?
Yes, please.
The dragon.
Yeah, we don't want to do anything to scare your children. That's the last thing we want to do. We don't want to scare anybody.
Only the true radiate life. Everything else is contaminated. Strata of artifice turn to dust. The pendulum vanishes. The true will of the individual supersedes the will of empire. A long, sinful reverie pierced. 1,000 moons of disavowal. The treacherous and ignorant shiver in their barrenness. The ideological opium has run out. Tribulation is here. Ice raining down on bone. This is the day of the natural human, those who harness the hidden flame, the fire that discerns noble from degenerate, the inner chamber that knows truth from untruth, aspirants alive in the light. There are two Americas. The first America is strong, moral, free, fierce, individual, exceptional, and spiritual. In this America, personal excellence is esteemed. Governance is necessarily small and limited. The individual rules. Only the good-hearted are welcome, and the land is full of wonder. And there is also a second America, a fragile nation, artificial, servile, timid, dependent, unexceptional, materialist. In this America, decadent culture is normal. Governance is vast and seeks to steer the life of every human. The federal state rules. The wrong-hearted are welcomed, and the land is full of pestilence. These two divergent Americas are at war. Morally, philosophically, emotionally, and physically. This has been coming for a long time. The insurgence of reality is now.
1. All composite phenomena are impermanent. 2. All contaminated things and events are unsatisfactory. 3. All phenomena are empty and selfless. And 4. Nirvana is true peace.
So few people actually choose a way of life.
For the first time in my life, I see that empire has shown its face, openly, plainly, publicly, no doubt. It's there for everyone to see, and only the most obstinate of intellectual reclusives can choose to deny it now. Empire has been compelled to reveal itself because the true will of the people refused the old order of business, the old facade of statesmanlike conduct, of protocols and politeness and allegiance, the pretense of civilization. All these things have been rejected, thrown out overwhelmingly, because the true will of a single human cannot be compromised or overcome. Only the false, coerced silence of a person can be controlled, not the sincere, loud, strong voice of the individual. Never. Because true will emanates from the divine. It is, in reality, the will of creation, the impulse for what is real, the impulse of the Creator, of God. Millions of men and women across America and Europe have said no to the imitation of polished pretend politics. It has been repudiated, and the fallout is ugly, very unsightly, and it is especially unpleasant because the true repugnant essence of world politics has been so systematically concealed for such a long time that generations of people have become accustomed and habituated only to its polite disguises, its smiling masks, nice suits and shirts and ties and handshakes, courteous words, pleasing summits and dinners and accords and press conferences. And this is all most viewers of national and international politics have ever seen. The PR, so to speak, the marketing, the spin, content to dream the dream along with them. Not wanting to know what's really going on and how grotesque and vicious it is. But now, all that posturing is falling away. Negating the old affectations of politics heralds the beginning of the end of empire. A campaign that has been waged for 25,000 years is now disintegrating. When the mask is removed, the end is assured. The earth is harsh for a reason. It stimulates sovereignty and strength in men and women. It compels independence. It is not a place for the faint-hearted. It will rebuke those who do not grasp their own destiny. It will hound those who disavow their path. The earth is harsh for a reason. It teaches, it loves, it raises. It wants every human to embody their own individual ascendant pathway. To make mental, emotional and spiritual development the centre of life. So knowing this, what are the leadership qualities we would wish to see in our wise elders? What traits and characteristics do we want to see in those who we ask to oversee certain matters on our behalf? Well, there are many qualities, of course, but let's boil them down to just 3. Wisdom, strength, integrity. Leaders who exude wisdom, strength, and integrity would likely do a good job. And there are other qualities on top of those that would help a person to do a most excellent job, but we'll stick with just those three: wisdom, strength, integrity. I cannot see those qualities in abundance in any political figure that I'm aware of. No one. I have not seen anyone I would consider qualified to lead me. So that is my starting point as we begin to talk about Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton and the 2016 election. And just because I observe the unsatisfactory state of affairs and the pervading brokenness of everything, it would be unacceptable for me or anyone else with an impulse for gnosis to wash our hands of it all, to just walk away. I would even say that we have an extra responsibility to examine what is going on, to deconstruct and to understand the deeper purpose here. We must acknowledge what is in front of our eyes, what is real here and now in life. We are involved in what is made here through our own words and our silences, through our seeing and our blindness, through our affirmation and our abandonment. I emphasize too that though we're going to talk a lot about political and material things, they are just as much a part of the spiritual path as anything else. And certainly there are degrees of separation and layers of symbolism that remove things from our immediate visceral encounter with reality. But there is no total disconnect. Everything is part of the path. As a thing is bound, so it is unbound. Only by understanding this mess, why and how it arose, can we do away with it and make something better. And as always, we must discriminate, we must judge for ourselves what is true and what is false. If you understand what empire is and how it works, in the present circumstances, Donald Trump as president is a good thing. Clearly and unequivocally a good thing. And many people have trouble with the idea of Trump as president being in any way a positive move. They are upset that this apparently vainglorious and ungentlemanly figure has been elected to high office. And one part of me understands that, of course. But the greater part of me is shocked at the short-sightedness of thinking Trump as president is a disaster. It is quite the opposite. So let us explore why Donald Trump as president is 1,000 times better than Hillary or Bill Clinton, than Obama or Bush or Reagan or Carter or Ford or Nixon or anyone else I can think of in recent history. The first step into this full comprehension is understanding the method of containment that empire uses to control men and women. One simple word: collectivism, which perhaps we should properly term as imperial collectivism. And for those who are not exactly sure what collectivism means, let me tell you. Collectivism is the political philosophy of centralized social and economic control. Let me repeat that. Collectivism is the political philosophy of centralized social and economic control. Centralized power structures determining what is best for everyone else. And this term is spoken of in many other places, of course. Politically, philosophically, in the mainstream, in the alternative press, logically, ideologically, plainly, obliquely, in many different ways, sometimes very instructively and helpfully described, and sometimes not. So I shall do my level best to articulate things well, to keep things sincere and illuminating and balanced. Let's do some elementary linguistic and logical philosophy here for a moment. Consider, let us declare that a human being, a living, warm, flesh and blood individual, is a real thing, an entity that lives and breathes and moves by its own will, a singular thing, at liberty to think and feel however it chooses. Whereas a collective, a society, a party, a community is not a real thing. It is an abstraction, a term for something, a mental model. A collective does not live, and it is not a thing. It is imaginary. You cannot converse with a collective. You cannot have dinner with a centralized power structure. You cannot touch it, smell it, or photograph it. Individuals may gather, of course, and you can observe that group, but the collective can never be a discrete entity with its own volition and presence. Yet this is precisely what empire is conditioning people to believe. To believe that the collective lives, and we are but a single trivial unit within it. And that collective is formulated and programmed by a small group of unelected people to appear a certain way. A collective that has radical groups that arise from it, that has social movements and cultural trends and global ideas and laws and attitudes. And all of that is fake. It is programmed into this abstract, non-existent collective by a few people who you could sit around one boardroom table. This is an important philosophical key to the conundrum of empire. An empire knows that most people choose not to think about these things, and so it is safe to elevate an illusory abstraction, the collective, above the actual life of every single human being. And people just buy it, they believe it, and they think, well, it must be true. A made-up thing comes to dominate and govern a real thing. A fake entity controls a genuine entity, and people permit that idea to preside over their lives. Imperial collectivism makes people feel that something big and important is happening somewhere else, and they, as an individual, don't need to do anything about that. Just eat, work, sleep, repeat. That's it. Everything is being taken care of somewhere else. And things are not very good now, but will be in the future at some point, maybe. And most people have become comfortable with this low form of existence. They think it's normal. Collectivism is a philosophy and a method. And the method operates much like a disease, a virus. And from studying this, I would say that the collectivist virus was formulated, in modern history at least, in around the 1870s, and then later perfected by intellectuals in around the 1930s. And in a sense then, there has been about 140 years of solid social conditioning. Everyone alive today has been subject to it. And because collectivism removes personal, social and economic control from the life of the individual, it has to distort the rational and emotional centres of a person, so as to erode their innate critical impulse to discriminate truth from falsehood. Or to put it very simply, from recognising that they're being screwed. And as part of that, it also seeks to wear down a person's instinct to express a personal preference or judgment in any matter. So these surgical removals are vital, because if all that natural instrumentation was online and active in a person, they would immediately reject the centralisation ethos, because it becomes plain that it only ever benefits the few at the expense of the many. It is, by nature, anti-human, unfree. It diminishes the individual. It separates humans from their own internal power. And from an esoteric perspective, it turns them in the opposite direction from their ascendant pathway. And of course, collectivism presents itself as something good. It pretends to be a happy thing. It masquerades as something wonderful and makes a lot of big promises, and it helps people dream of a better world. It propagates the belief that through achieving a state of universal uniformity in all areas of life, in temperament, philosophy, quality, outlook, gender, race, opportunity, finance, sexuality, education, we somehow liberate society and find lasting harmony and prosperity. This is untrue. It is a mask. The real task of collectivism is to disconnect men and women from self-governance and individual pathways to the divine. It wants to standardize everything, people, sex, culture, and achieve uniform dullness in everything, where it is desired that nothing stands out or excels, to reduce and conform all colourful individuals into homogeneous grey blobs, the global template for an unconscious, compliant citizen, the grey human. No identity, no aspirations, no culture, no fellowship, no homeland, no insight, no judgment, no discrimination, no impulse to radiate the uniqueness within themselves. It conditions people to become content to live by group ideologies and deny the primal inner self, to become addicted to consumption, to think that everything is of the same value. Nothing is superior or inferior. It's all good. Imperial collectivism trains people to believe that they should be protected from uncomfortable feelings. And if they do feel psychologically upset in some way, then the event or idea or person who triggered that upset is at fault. And that thing must be turned into the grey blob so there can be no more offence. The more grey blobs there are, the less uncomfortable differences there are. Everyone shielded from the harsh earth. Everyone severed from its teachings. Collectivism promotes the idea that there's no objective truth or value. Everything is relative, and therefore nothing matters. And this erodes family and spirituality and identity and real human organic culture. Liberalism, as a socio-political phenomenon, can be considered as a symptom of the imperial collectivist virus. Liberalism is not a naturally occurring human movement towards freedom of expression or fair play in economic and educational mobility. It is not about progressive ideas with regard to society, culture, productivity and governance. It has nothing to do with even-handedness and inclusiveness. Nothing. The word liberal simply means generous. A certain breadth and kindness in temperament and open-mindedness, munificence, looking ahead to the new, to goodness. And most men and women that I know are liberal in that sense. Naturally, of course they are. And in fact, up until about 1940, I would say many excellent independent thinkers would be happy to have had that term liberal applied to them. But today it has been redefined as something entirely different. And it has nothing to do even with John Locke's 17th century ideas about private ownership and the consent of the governed. It is now something very distant from that. You could say, from a practical level, that the shape of contemporary liberalism was influenced by the ideas of John Maynard Keynes, an English economist who wrote about social liberalism and social justice in the 1920s, a good couple of centuries after Locke's death. And this new liberalism from the 1930s onwards led to an unparalleled expansion in government control of people's lives, increased government spending and outwardly creeping infrastructure. So consequently, the work of the common man became ever more embroiled in the business of government, both directly in working for government and indirectly working for government-appointed groups and institutes and departments and organisations. People became acclimated to this big brother in their lives, in all their private affairs. They got used to it, until it seemed normal. Normal to have the government telling you what to do in all areas of life. And then after the Second World War in 1945, we see the critical apparatus of the welfare state becoming a prominent factor in liberal philosophy, an ideological symbol leveraged more and more to be worshipped as part of imperial collectivism. A system of financial aid to help not just those who cannot help themselves, but also for those who choose not to help themselves, and even those who will not help themselves. And that subsidization is taken by force in the form of taxes from everyone else, both through the office of federal agencies, state agencies, and even the county. And alongside welfare is healthcare. And in Britain, the free healthcare system is called the National Health Service, or the NHS. It is not free at all, of course. It is paid for by mandatory national insurance tax contributions, which are taken out of people's pay. Nothing is free, and the more people that jack into that free healthcare without contributing, the more everyone else's taxes skyrocket. Free welfare and free healthcare gravitate a society towards a communal doctrine, communism. And this doctrine has been instilled into European society for a very long time. Free welfare and free healthcare dished out to people to create a giant underclass who form the basis of many collectivist social strategies. Without that underclass, without that poverty, collectivism struggles. It needs that dependency to function. I have always considered most large European countries to be, at best, democratic socialist states. Certainly Britain, France, Germany, Spain, Portugal, Italy, Belgium, Switzerland, the Netherlands, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland, all easily fit into this democratic socialism, and have done so for generations. And many others further eastwards are flat-out communist. And that's not the marketing spin, of course. Big European countries like Britain and France and Germany and Scandinavian regions are meant to look like free, modern democracies, capitalist-based and conforming to the sombre determinations of the electorate. But if you program that electorate, those 700 million people in Western Europe, to consent to imperial collectivist dogma, which the vast majority do, then they willingly subject themselves to whatever ridiculous oligarchy are temporarily given the imperial reins. And that equates to, in real terms, massive government, total surveillance of citizenry, thousands of petty and restrictive laws, distorted taxation, state ownership and regulation of community resources and industries, and overall complete aristocratic rule outside of elected government. Democratic or Republican, Labour or Conservative, it doesn't matter. It's all collectivism. The European Union is a failed experiment in just that. And proud, strong, free, excellent Europeans know that decentralisation and national cultural identity are important things. They arise over millennia and are critically important resonators for the refinement of a people through time, expressing the deepest consciousness and psyche and spirit. So Brexit, unsurprising. France and Germany gravitating back to nationalism and running out of patience with un-French, un-German things, totally unsurprising. To view these things as radical populist revolts is foolish. It is nature seeking rebalance, which would be entirely unnecessary had it not been for the premeditated multicultural collectivism of empire. Remember, collectivism seeks to take people and cultures and make grey blobs out of them. So it is always fascinating to me to see how America has been a constant problem for empire. It could never quite subdue the people of North America, regardless of creed or blood. Nevertheless, in the 1930s, the imperial administrators thought, if we can indoctrinate the USA with collectivist culture, it'll be easier to reclaim that magnificent landmass. And so, empire decided that instead of using brute force, It would instead simply indoctrinate people, brainwash them into accepting the power of an artificial collective over the power of real individuals. And that, in a nutshell, is the game of empire. During the extraordinary 2016 presidential election, a number of things really knocked my socks off. And first and foremost among those was my realization of just how many people have been tricked into collectivism. Millions of otherwise decent people who have been scammed, conned into embracing imperial collectivism, into this vile democratic socialism. How did this happen? Through imperial sequestration of our education systems. Everyone born after about 1960, if they went to normal elementary schools, primary schools, high schools, colleges, universities, and whether they were regular ones or super posh exclusive ones, has been subject to the most vigorous imperial indoctrination. A very disempowering philosophy embedded in teachers and educational materials, the coursework, the curricula, and everything to do with schooling. And all of it essentially persuading young people to devalue individualism, to veer away from discrimination and judgment, to not think for themselves, but instead just parrot the dogma of imperial think tanks who've already determined cultural policy. It is a very real and desperate thing, this long sequestration of the education system. And this is why we have two Americas, the free, independent republic and the servile, dependent, democratic socialist state. This second America can only exist because of the people who have ingested all that programming. And I would say that the cumulative effect of imperial conditioning in education means that by about 25, most people are dead inside, already philosophically complacent within themselves and entirely obedient to the collective rules. The authorities tell them what to do and they do it. No need to formulate ideas for themselves, because the media figureheads, the state intellectuals, the politicians, the celebrities do that for them. Pick up the prescription and swallow. An irreversibly conditioned populace walking around Seattle and Portland and San Diego and Chicago and LA and Boston and Denver and Atlanta and London and Liverpool and Manchester and Toronto and Vancouver and Sydney, Melbourne, Bangalore, Mexico City, Johannesburg, Tokyo, everywhere. Any man, any woman who does not have innate resilience to external control will be caught in the net and processed, programmed for non-discrimination and happy subservience. Dead inside. Though something is happening to change that now. A higher frequency of genuine human thought and being has arisen, crossed the threshold. Not in number, but in quality. A frequency attained in sheer fidelity of signal. Not from the number of heads thinking it, but from the quality of the thoughts themselves. From the lucid remnant. They are changing the script. It is being amended right now, and no one can do anything to change that, not even empire. Many people find it hard to believe that empire is so powerless to oppose the true will of the people. But it's easy when you get that true will is divine will. Nothing can oppose this will, because everything is made from it. Everything must yield to its law. Empire is immobilized in its path. Empire can only control muted capitulation, cynical silence, thoughtless repetition. When we radiate what is real, what is good, it breaks all false bonds. It dissolves what is counterfeit and magnetizes what is true. So when we make good homes, good work, good fellowship, we grow stronger. We aspire to excellence. No one dependent on anyone else. Alliances of true depth and beauty and revelation arise. Real individuals living together in strength. Truth is fire. There is much work to be done. Eons of corruption to purify, piece by piece. The speed and smoothness of this will happen in accordance with how truthfully we live. The media bias through the 2016 election has been truly mind-blowing. The profound and shameless partiality of the mainstream media, particularly CNN and the New York Times, but also ABC, Reuters, CBS, NBC, NPR, MSNBC, BBC, USA Today, The New Yorker, The Washington Post, The Economist, Politico, Google, Facebook, Twitter, Slate, BuzzFeed, Bloomberg. Absolutely bloody awful. A disgrace to humanity. How anyone can ever pay attention to that spineless editorial and commentary ever again is beyond me. Even rubbish local rags like the Seattle Times and the Oregonian. Just terrible, wicked nonsense. And for anyone who doubts that this apparently enormous and complex media sphere is so utterly corrupt, here's a few things to think about. First off, you could easily fit the very few corporate owners of these mega organisations into my house. And you would discover as we drank our cocktails and talked that they are all collectivist in personal philosophy. So consequently their editors and presenters and journalists and columnists and experts all tend to come from the same empire-centric educational backgrounds. And there'll always be one or two independents who slip through, good men and women, but mostly not. And they're all programmed in the same 50 stupid universities. Secondly, advertising money. Advertising money from mega corporations determines what will be reported and how, and what will go totally unreported. So advertising effectively censors the content of the shows and the newspapers and the websites and the radio broadcasts, everything. Even those who claim to be independent from advertising are not really at all. So advertising censorship is central to collectivist media philosophy. It's not an added bonus, it's part of the censoring. Thirdly, most of the academic studies and research and think tanks that inform policy and content for the media arise from empire, deeply flawed and compromised. And I would say that all government-funded research studies, whether directly or indirectly, are suspect to me. All that language where you see a recent study shows that 90% of Americans feel such and such a thing, all of that is just garbage. It can say anything, it can say nothing. It can say red, it can say blue. Whenever you see that, recent studies undertaken at Yale or Berkeley or Harvard indicate that such and such, it's just rubbish, absolute shite. And fourthly, the intelligence services. The CIA, FBI, MI6, MI5, Mossad, Shin Bet, DGSE, DGSI, all of those guys have profoundly influenced the content of American, British, Israeli and French media for at least 50 years. And I would say more like 100 in their prior forms. And those countries form the content of most media for the whole world, if you examine thoroughly. So, 1, 2, 3, 4. Ownership, advertising, academia, intelligence services. Total media control is, as we say in England, a piece of piss. Easy. been going on for ages. And no one quite believed it 25 years ago, but now it's right there in front of us if you want to see it. So the election helped us to witness total media patronage of collectivist philosophy. Total. So Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, just standard bearers, just there to rouse the gullible and to encourage the dreamers to just keep dreaming. Ignore what is real and just keep dreaming. And we'll come to talk about Hillary shortly. And alongside the inauthentic media narratives, there were the polls, the pollsters, polling people, canvassing opinion, gathering data to support the collectivist storyline. And what gibberish all that turned out to be. Especially from Reuters, the lying, cheating sons of bitches. And one observer of this polling rip-off was a veteran political statistician, Patrick Cadell, a bloke who's been examining polls and stuff for ages and at quite a senior level, consulting in the White House in the 1970s and whatnot. And he suggested that Reuters was basically guilty of professional malpractice. To cut a long story short, what they did was they changed some polling methodology and then went back to previous polls and tinkered with those previously released results to present a different outcome, basically giving Hillary a false lead when in fact Trump was leading. And this guy Cadell said, "This comes as close as I have ever seen to cooking the results. I suppose you can get away with it in polling because there are no laws, but if this was accounting, they would put them in jail." And it wasn't just Reuters. There were many others too, just as controlled and compliant and pathetic. In terms of television, CNN was the worst, easily. Quite unbelievable favouritism, with some of the dumbest, most prejudiced and unprofessional political pundits I've ever seen in my life. With the newspapers, it was the New York Times. They delivered the most consistently skewed commentary you can think of. And I shall not forget this, nor should you. They all lied. And whatever you think about Democratic and Republican Party politics, the media can never be trusted again, just in case you weren't sure. So is it not reasonable to say that CNN and the New York Times and most all of the other mainstream media in America, Europe, Asia and everywhere did not and do not deliver what we call news? What they actually do is deliver a predetermined narrative, favourable imperial commentary, the presentation of storylines that have already been shaped by political and corporate interests. So as I say, through the media and other things, empire has shown its face, clear as day. The media have been caught red-handed, and anyone who looked upon this debacle with reason and honesty will now know that the mainstream media are not in the business of news. Have you noticed how often people are being accused of being racist and chauvinist and homophobic and sexist and bigoted and xenophobic and all that? Every day, someone is being labelled a racist and losing their job, or homophobic and being fined, or bigoted and being ostracised somehow. So it seems to me that one of two things must be true here. Either there is a global problem of inherent prejudice and deep-rooted hatred in practically every human being, or artificial crimes are being invented that can be levelled at anyone arbitrarily at any time for expressing any kind of preference. Anyone who opposes the philosophy of imperial culture and its propagation of inoffensive grey blobs will be accused of some ism or phobia. And that includes me. In imperial terms, I am racist. I am xenophobic. I am sexist. I judge. I discriminate. I hate. I am racist, xenophobic and sexist because I see clear differences between races, cultures and genders. I discriminate based on those observations. I prefer some cultures and races over others, yes. I prefer some gender traits and skills and forms and ideas over others. I prefer some sexual expressions and orientations over others. Yes, absolutely I do. I prefer some communities and local traditions over others. Yes. And I talk about that, and I express that. I see strengths and weaknesses in society, diverging histories, unique blood wisdom, different pace, temper, refinement, insight, different levels of warmth, different kinds of tone, different comportment in people. And some of those elements are within one's own grasp. And some are inexorably wrought into the bones of our ancestors over thousands of years. Initially, everyone is bound to their race, their culture, their gender, for good reason. It is significant, your skin, your tradition, your home soil, your body. It matters. We were born to that body, those parents, that culture, for important reasons. Together, they reveal our internal trajectory and our external discovery. To renounce our nature is to refuse the gift of ascendancy. Everything can be transcended, but first, to achieve that, it must be understood. It must be known. I judge. I discriminate. I hate. I judge what I see to be good or bad, right or wrong, agreeable or distasteful, helpful or obstructive. I use my powers of discrimination to measure the quality of a thing, to assess its merits and gauge its characteristics. These are my choices. I sanction these resolutions within myself. I hate because there are some things and some people I intensely dislike. I see their decay and how it harms everything around them. I hate disavowal. I hate willful distortion, bad conduct, dogmatism. And when I see these things embodied in bad men and women, in bad words and pictures, in exploitative religions, in fake education, I hate them. And it is my free will to hate whatever I choose. And what someone else hates or loves is their business. Hate is to love as ash is to fire. Both part of honest reflection, polarity in action. There can be no equilibrium without both. To map our love and hate, to know our creation and destruction is imperative. A very personal journey. So never be deceived by the fake isms and phobias of empire. Remember, collectivism is centralized social and economic control. Social control. And what better way to control a society than to sequester and redefine its very language? To have the people afraid to express preferences. To be afraid not to like something. To be afraid to prefer something over another thing. Imagine being scared to express your dislike for something. If you don't like something that men do, or women do, or a religious group does, or the way someone behaves. Imagine not being able to love something that someone does, or the way a country is, or the way a spiritual tradition is. Being afraid to celebrate how something looks, how it sounds, how it feels. Never be afraid to express your likes and dislikes. They are yours, your preferences. It is our business what we find ourselves magnetized to and what we are repulsed by. We are allowed. And our preferences can be refined or coarse, vulgar, unpopular, doesn't matter. They can be explicable or inexplicable. They can evolve or they can stay the same. That's the sole business of the individual. And we like the idea that our preferences and gravitations refine over time. We cultivate them to be more elegant and harmonious and wide-ranging as we grow within ourselves. But that can never be prescribed from the outside. It is a very personal journey that takes place deep within the core of every individual in very unique ways. And it begins with someone expressing themselves freely, however offensive that may be, however unknowable, however strange. Remember, the whole enterprise of America was founded to get away from the tyranny of England and Europe, to create another way of life where criticism of the authorities would not lead to execution, as it did in Europe for millennia. America was supposed to be a place where personal, spiritual and philosophical ideas can be explored freely and fully, can be talked about openly, even when it makes people feel hurt or sad inside. In England and Europe, such free speech was impossible. If you didn't agree with the authorities, they may reprimand you, they may imprison you, torture you, execute you. And that is what they did to people in their millions. And everyone else was so petrified, so afraid of this imperial punishment, that they just did whatever they were told. And that echo still reverberates today.
Evening, Harry.
Hello, Bert. What are you going to have?
It's very kind of you. I think I'll have a pint of,
What, light?
No.
Brown? What?
No,
Mod?
No.
Bitter?
Bitter.
What,
Bitter. Have a pint of bitter.
Pint of bitter?
Yeah.
Well, how are you then, eh? All right?
Marsh and Grumble. Marsh and Grumble. Just been up the,
Up club?
No.
What, dogs? What?
No,
What, fish shop?
No,
Doctors?
Doctors, yeah, I've just been up the doctors. Yeah. Only I've been having a bit of trouble with my,
Chest?
No.
Ears? Waterworks?
No, wife.
Oh, wife.
Only she's got it in her head that I'm a little bit,
What, annoyed with her? What,
no,
annoyed with her?
no.
What, a drunk? What,
No,
a puff?
no, no, a bit under the weather.
All right.
Yeah. Doctor's examined me thoroughly, says nothing to worry about at all, so it's all right.
Yeah.
Got me to drop my, Had a good look at my...
Go on.
Told me there was nothing to worry about at all. He said, on the contrary, he said I was very...
First class?
No,
Fascinated?
No.
What? Not friendly, did
no,
you?
no. Fit, very fit. You know, very fit for a man of...
90?
No, a man of my age.
Oh, yeah.
It's nice to know, really.
Yeah.
Of course, I only went up there on the...
On the bus?
No, on the off chance.
On the off chance, yeah.
You been up there lately?
No, I haven't. No.
It's all changed up there now. Oh, dear, yeah. He's got this marvellous, great, big new...
What, Rolls Royce?
No.
Waiting room? Receptionist?
Receptionist, yeah. Marvellous, great, big new receptionist. Yeah. Oh, she's got it all...
All up here?
No.
Down there?
No.
Really?
Where's she got it? She's got it all...
All over? She got it all over?
No. She's got it all organised up there. Up there, as you know, it used to be a right mess up the doctor's place, didn't it? Now it's all organised. I mean, I just stood there in a...
In a queue?
No,
What, in a vest?
No.
In a draft?
No. In amazement.
Oh,
Just It's like a conveyor belt up there now, you know. So now all this sexy quality business, you know, none of them cubicles anymore. You know, all the fellas had to take off the shirts and they stood against that wall over there. Yeah. And all the ladies took off their dresses and sat in...
Sat in blouses?
No.
Not sat in panties?
No. Rows, sat in rows.
Oh, sat in rows. Yeah.
Well, it's better get off you.
Are you off, are you?
Yeah. Thought I might go home tonight and give the wife
evening off and a washing up.
No.
Bottle of stout and fish supper. A night you never forget.
Oh, that's an idea, though. Thanks for the suggestions. I might give her all three.
Hello.
Comprehensive spiritual development requires a study not only of ourselves, but of society at large. We must make the time and spend the energy to examine the reality around us. When we do, when we acquaint ourselves with the parapolitical international landscape, with real world history, with the superstructures of globalist administration and the appropriation of our education systems, we see that Donald Trump, as president, is a good thing. Empire did not want Trump as president. His vanity and egotism make him hard to control. He is buffered from manipulation more than most. He is a bad bet for Empire. His getting elected was not a clever double bluff on the part of Empire. He is a problem for them. Trump himself probably perceives the presidency as the ultimate symbol of accomplishment in his career. A notch on the bedpost. No need of money, just prestige now. But he does also occasionally show a gleam of concern for the country that's been so good to him, which I have never seen in other political leaders of recent times. With a rudimentary esoteric education, one comes to know that American exceptionalism is an important thing. Not a facet of politics or culture, but embedded in the sacred nature of the land itself. America is different to all other countries. It is a bold experiment in self-governance. It is a different kind of republic and social organisation. It is a place that offers men and women liberation from the old ways. But as Manly P. Hall reminded us in 1944, North America was called the Blessed Isles by the ancient sages of Egypt and Greece thousands of years ago, way before the official historical timeline would have us believe. And the old mystics knew that this was a special place. They considered it the crucible for something new. A land that supported a level of spiritual liberty that Empire was powerless to control. Something it could not understand. And America has been inexplicably resistant to imperial assimilation. Perhaps it has had some extraordinary help. Empire made contingency plans for Trump, of course. Strategies laid out, backdoors ready to go. But none of them can succeed without the silence and obsequiousness of the people. So now it is especially important for people not to fall into the daydream of collectivism. They can preserve their liberty and forward thinking and freedom of expression, but not the prescribed anti-judgment, anti-discrimination severance of empire that kills the human gift of insight. Empire is shaking at its foundation. All this garbage about Russia and horrible new Ministry of Truth laws being rushed in. Empire deciding what is fake news and what is not. Good luck with that. Tyrannical, psyop chicanery. It won't work. But it needs our willpower to ensure a good outcome. As long as the true will of the individuals together say no, Empire cannot succeed. No bullets, no missiles, no diseases, no nothing can oppose the divine will. As I say over and over, true will is woven into the very fabric of reality itself, and we are part of that design. If you knew quite how profoundly involved in creation you are, you'd never sleep at night, in case you dreamed the wrong thing, which you can never really do. But that's another story. Donald Trump, as president, is a 9/11 Stargate moment, another one. What I mean by that is that Trump represents the unmasking of empire. Not Trump himself, not as a redeemer, not as a saviour, of course not. He's just a businessman. But the fact, the circumstance of his presidency openly and definitely reveals the presence of empire all around him. His very existence exposes it in the White House, in party politics, in Congress, in the Senate, in lobbyist groups, in international affairs, in military campaigns, in propaganda, in globalist trade corruption, in unconstitutional federal and state agencies, in the Supreme Court, in society. And he highlights the presence of empire, not through the light of his consciousness, but through the shadow of his unconsciousness. Hillary Clinton. Is she okay? Is she merely an idealistic politician trying to do something half good for the people and maybe half good for her own career and legacy? Or not? Is there something more sinister going on with her? Many people have asked me to talk about Hillary and share my thoughts on her. When I see Hillary, I see someone barely able to conceal their malevolence. I see it is always present in her, an anger fused into her demeanour and thought. Behind the smiles and handshakes, it's always there, this bitterness, this condescension, and a sense of no conscience, no soul. What she's done in office is awful. Her tenure as Secretary of State from 2009 to 2013 is full of serious problems, and that is comprehensively backed up by other ambassadors from around the world, her own Secret Service detail, her own former aides, and a few good senior senators who've watched her over the decades. People who have worked closely with her, had direct experience with her behaviour. And then there is Hillary the human, the individual being, a woman without doubt who is deeply disturbed. And in a very super zoomed out fashion, I feel sorry for her. There is just unfathomable psychological damage. And frankly, she should be in an institution under constant care and supervision. I have always felt that the Clintons are a danger to the United States. And if you look at the history and ethical practices of the Clinton Foundation, you learn that it was full of wrongness from the very beginning. Ripe with bribery, fraud, money laundering, extortion, racketeering, and far more serious things like murder, treason, human trafficking. These things are whispers now, but they will come out in broad daylight loud and clear when the time is right. And people say, if the Clintons really are so criminal, then why haven't they been prosecuted? There must be enough evidence, enough of a paper trail, so why not? Well, there is a well-worn strategy that's been used in international skullduggery for thousands of years, and they're employing the same strategy. It has been difficult to indict the Clintons for their crimes because they have been protected by a shield of dominoes. What that means is that if they go down, so do 100 other major figures in world politics, government, monarchy, aristocracy, media, business, and so on. The criminality is spread across so many people that the Clintons' activities will automatically implicate and incriminate untold numbers of very prominent public figures, people who they helped and people who helped them. The ramifications would be shattering for the public perception of world government and popular culture in every continent. The people would realise, without question, that they have been lied to for generations in almost every conceivable area of life. So when I see people with a Hillary bumper sticker on their car, it blows my mind. And I just think, they mustn't know. They mustn't know. I find it weird that people can vote for her. They are just dreaming. Even the former Assistant FBI Director James Colstrom a few months ago said the following: "The Clintons, that's a crime family basically. It's like organised crime. I mean, the Clinton Foundation is a cesspool." And there are hundreds of credible, good, honest state and federal officials, yes, who have been warning us about the Clintons for years. But the media have dutifully buried it because Empire told them to. The Clintons are natural collectivists. And you know, really, even so, it's never about one person. It's never about one family. It's not about Bill or Obama or Donald or Hillary or anyone else. They are just disposable avatars like any other. And there are hundreds of other very high-profile people out there who support empire in the media. Stars, pop musicians, actors, business people, pumping billions of dollars into the continuance of centralized control of human beings. And you might want to consider that next time you're presented with an opportunity to buy their products. People who donate and pledge and funnel their technology and their fame and their profile, their financial resources and marketing power to support empire, to maintain and promote collectivism. They want to turn America into a giant imperial democratic socialist superstate. Consider carefully who you give your resources to, internally, externally, money, thoughts, beliefs, light. There can be no personal liberty while there is centralized social and economic control. And as the mysterious figure at the signing of the Declaration of Independence said, God has given America to be free. Things I have learned from the 2016 election. 1. Cities are highly programmable. Urban environments make people easier to condition. Whether it's New York, Portland, Seattle, LA, San Francisco, these places are easy to brainwash. And there are many reasons for this, but 2 standout reasons. The disconnect from the natural environment and the total saturation of imperial culture in day-to-day life. You can do that in a city, but not in small towns, not in villages, not in rural communities. 2. The imperial governance of California and New York, the 2 places that make all the images and words for global mainstream media, these 2 states are blatantly unconstitutional. No clear free speech, no clear Second Amendment, bad policies for education, healthcare, property, small businesses, immigration, taxation, basic policing, infrastructure, water, road systems, everything. They are the least free and most conditioned places in America. Good people there, of course, all over. We're not talking about the people. We're talking about the governance and the conditioning. Happily, most states are quite free, especially states like Arizona, Oklahoma, Utah, Wyoming, Nevada, Montana, South Dakota, Tennessee, Idaho, Florida, Indiana, Iowa, South Carolina, Georgia. And then you have places in between, like Texas, Washington State, Oregon, Colorado, who are a mixed bag. They do some things really well. Pretty decent personal freedoms and individual liberty, which is why I choose to live in Washington, but crap central state governance, garbage collectivist philosophy, and I am hopeful that that is about to change over the next 12 to 15 years. 3. Equality is conformity. It is not equity, not fairness, not even-handedness. It is imperial standardization. 4. Social justice is collectivism, not freedom, not liberty, not righteousness. It is imperial group think. 5. LGBT stuff is garbage. Nothing to do with gender and sexual identity. The real purpose of the fake LGBT psyop is to marginalize and eliminate the sacred teachings of masculine and feminine energy. It encourages young people to blame gender and sexual misalignment for totally unrelated emotional disharmony, educational shortcomings, bad parenting, messed up social constructs, no wise elders. And without the full comprehension and balancing of solar masculine and lunar feminine flow, the emotional intelligence of a person is retarded. To consider gender as a lifestyle choice is a disaster. 6. Congress is beyond repair. There are hundreds of wrong-hearted men and women in Congress, in both the Senate and the House, who have been entrenched for decades, constructing this sort of vast social hive, with protocols for buying and selling power and getting issues elevated or buried, and swaying and even sometimes determining national and international policy through private means, totally outside of the will of the people. It is a racket. And as Thomas Jefferson said, history shows how long-term public service degenerates into an inheritance. 7. High taxation is a strong indicator of imperial collectivism. Excessive taxes. Mandatory wealth redistribution. In Denmark, Finland and Sweden, sometimes more than 50% of someone's pay is taxed. In fact, up to 56% in Sweden. That's imperial collectivism branded as socialism. A low standard of living. Never believe those stupid standard of living indexes that are pushed out into the media. 8. Self-determination dissolves empire. When we truly avow our gift of life and acknowledge the power of our judgment, there is no longer a purpose to empire. No need for it. Fundamentally, at the macro-metaphysical level, empire is only here to provoke us towards self-authority, to spur us to recognize the beautiful teachings of the spiritual life, of real life, to embody core personal responsibility. And because empire can only subsist by stimulating this low-frequency human acquiescence in the masses, if that unconscious submission is removed, it will cease to exist. Transmute yourself, transmute the world. Truthful living in thought, feeling, and deed is the blade of deliverance.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Roamcast. Neil Kramer loves you. You heard clips from the following. Dialogue from Excalibur, the 1981 film, directed by John Boorman. The song, The Kiss, by The Cure, from the 1987 album, Kiss Me Kiss Me Kiss Me. The song, Jack's Cheese and Bread Snack, by Aunt, from the 2003 album, Blumencraft. Dialogue from Rumpole of the Bailey. Dialogue from the Two Ronnies. The song, Great Days, by Moria. If you liked any of those clips, support the artists and go buy their stuff. That's all for now. See you again soon. Until then, we wish you a beautiful day.